When I was about 19, I went on a sort of a social experiment where I tried basically every dating app that was available on the App Store. And at one point, I joined a dating app that was called something along the lines of like Cougar.com. It was an app for dating older women if you're a younger man. And I thought maybe being sort of fetishized would help my chances, right? Because I wasn't having a lot of luck on any of the mainstream apps. And so I thought, boy, it would be nice to date somebody who thinks it's really cool and attractive that I'm young. Like that just being young and having visually the fact that I'm youthful be visible. Boy, it would be nice to be sexualized in that way. One thing I very quickly learned from this social experiment is that those apps are not real. They do not exist. They are fake. Like they exist. You can download them on your phone, but they're functionally scams or aggregators of scams. You can go onto a site like that, but the user base is smaller than the user base for a more mainstream site like Tinder or Bumble or Hinge. So really, anytime you're talking about a niche, a dating app, specific for the black community or the Muslim community, or in this case, the cougar community, those sort of niche dating apps really don't have a large enough audience to be sort of financially stable, and so a lot of times they're very cheaply produced and they're very low quality. They have a lot of bots, they have a lot of scammers, and even if the app itself wasn't designed with that intention, even if the app itself was well intentioned and not a scam and real, it is filled to the brim with people trying to get your money. The moment I was on the application, I matched with just a bunch of different women who did not exist, who, for reasons they could not articulate, really wanted to communicate exclusively via Telegram. If you don't know, Telegram is an application that is very underground, very untraceable, which makes it pretty much impossible for police officers to trace the message, trace the interaction, which is good if you're doing something illegal or if you are a scammer. Additionally, advice for any women on even just mainstream dating apps like Bumble and Tinder. I see a lot of times, I see women with very lazy profiles where they just put a few pictures of themselves, maybe a couple of answers to the personality questions they have on there, and then they just post their Snapchat and they're like, check this out and communicate with me more. Most of those women are not real women. Or maybe they are real women, but they're real women who are selling porn. They're either real women selling porn, or they're robots pretending to sell porn, or they're real women pretending to sell porn, but then they don't actually give you porn and they take your money and they run. Either way, not someone you really want to be interacting with for too long. If you are a real woman who communicates via Snapchat, because I know that some of these people do exist, Snapchat is, unlike Telegram, used by a lot of people. A lot of people prefer Snapchat to texting. I even know a lot of people in my generation who they won't give out their phone number to like a stranger, but they'll give out their Snapchat. That's like the dipping your toes in the water of getting to know a person. So if you are a real woman and you're thinking to yourself, oh, maybe I should put my Snapchat in my profile, I suggest you don't, because the vast majority of men will think you are a scammer or a porn salesman. And that's probably going to reduce the number of matches or potential attention you're going to get on the application. Older women and younger men's sexualities are really just one of a number of different relationships situations. that get stigmatized. You can really think of any group difference, and there's probably at least some stigma. Black men and white women, black women and white men, older men, younger women, uh, people from France and people from Italy. I'm just making that one up. What a lot of these dynamics have in common, I think, is trust and distrust. In general, the person who is judgmental towards a relationship of this kind, of the older woman dating younger man variety, what they're expressing is a distrust of the individual in the relationship itself to be able to consent to the relationship, to be able to make that decision for themselves as an individual. And I think it's weird that on the left, I'm gonna cite the Tumblr 2013 left specifically, the sort of social justicey left. The emphasis is normally very heavily on destigmatization. I think they would even probably say that we need to destigmatize cougar as a relationship type, right? They would probably be on board with that. But then other times, when certain specific power structures are brought into the conversation, their position flips and they become less trustful. I'll give you an example. Gold diggers as a concept, right? So a gold digger is kind of a unique situation because the idea of a gold digger is a woman exploiting a man for his money. And some people, I think, don't like the concept of a gold digger because it is a person with power being exploited. And I think a lot of people, they don't like that. They want the person with power to always be the exploiter and the person without power to always be the exploitee. They want the world to be simple in that way. But real women who date men with money have to get stigmatized because of this idea that's out there. They have to be judged and called a gold digger, and I think that's probably pretty terrible for them. And so I think that even though the goal of calling someone a gold digger is to protect someone with power, which is an inverted relationship, the real root of the problem with it is that you're not trusting the people in that relationship to make the decision for themselves. Just because he's rich and she's not does not automatically mean that he's exploiting her with his money, and it also doesn't automatically mean that she's just with him for his money. It could completely mean that they are in love with one another and they just happen to have this difference in wealth or power. And then there's passport bros. Recently, on the left, passport bros has become a big debate and a conversation. And this is one where the left is very much on the sort of distrusting, or what I would call the authoritarian side of these relationship dynamics. Because a passport bro, simple definition, is a man who moves to another country, probably a poorer country, in order to find women who want to date him. Some of these men have views like women in the West just aren't real women anymore, so I have to go elsewhere to find, good, proper, chaste virgins who will do my housework, and some of them probably don't have those beliefs. In fact, the definition of passport bro has been very unclear to almost anyone having this debate online. As far as I can tell, the definition means completely different things to different groups of people because they're trying to say opposite things. To critics of passport bros, being a passport bro is abusing the power of having wealth at a level of just being born in the United States, having just that middle class wealth is a lot of money in a lot of places. So even if you're just a middle class man from the United States, here you can go abroad and be almost like a rich guy somewhere else. And so the critics say that that's colonization, that that's an abuse of power. Meanwhile, the supporters can often point to women in these relationships who are happy, who are saying, stop calling my husband a passport bro, I love my husband. And so it's almost a form of extended, more depthful prostitution in a way. It's maybe money is involved, maybe it's not involved, but even if it is, who are you to judge? It's a consensual interaction between a woman who maybe needs money and a man who has it. Seems mutually beneficial. And I think what happens here a lot of times on the left is that the overarching power structures and fighting against them gets confused for fighting against individuals that are symbols of these power structures. So is it a problem that there are people in the West with so much more money than people in the global South, let's say, who do not have these resources, and that creates this power dynamic that can be abused, that can be exploited, that can be lorded over people in those countries? Yeah, that is a problem. That probably is a problem we should solve. Should we really be imposing that problem culturally onto individual couples? Probably not, I would say. I would say that that's far too distrustful of individuals' ability to make choices for themselves. So I think it's important to pay attention to when we're being sort of authoritarian about relationship dynamics and saying we know better than the people in the relationship whether or not they should be able to consent to this relationship, and when we're being what you might call libertarian about a relationship dynamic and saying that I trust the individuals in direct relation to this decision to make the best decision about it. Ugh. Jesus. Y'all fucks wanted production quality? Huh? You wanted lighting? I cannot afford that. So this is kind of like having production quality. This is as production quality as I'm willing to get. Yeah, this is your budget. You're the $5 I had to pay for fucking parking because I keep trying to steal parking and I keep getting caught and getting tickets, and now I just fucking pay for parking like a loser, which I do not admit to stealing parking. Is that a thing you could say on camera? I don't think you could say that on camera. Yeah, the real thing I'm trying to get you to realize is the horizontal connections between the issues, right? Because when you take them one at a time, there's not really much you can do with it. It's when you start to package the ideas together and form an overarching ideology, that's when things get interesting and exciting. And that's when we can suss people out, you can criticize them, you can find the contradictions in what they're saying. And a lot of the packages that we've been handed, I think, are inadequate. I think that if they were working, stuff wouldn't suck so much, or we wouldn't be rethinking them so much right now. So I think we really got to unpack the bundles of ideas we've been handed and ask ourselves, okay, which of these ideas gets to stick around, and which of these ideas needs to go away? Which of these ideas needs to go away? And judging from how fun and cool and sexy I am, and how that has not helped my case, I think this one needs to go away, you guys. I think this particular concept, it imposes upon individuals too much from above, and we got to get rid of those. We got to get rid of those things The voices in our head, really. That's really what we got to get rid of more than anything, is the thinking, the neurotics. Just act, just do it. Go outside. Look, here I am, touching, well, not grass per se. I'm gonna have to just cut out that part where I just stare into the camera for 10 seconds. That goes for everybody. You know, I think I have bisexual female friends who are like, I can't talk to women, they're so scary. Men are easy, women are scary. Do scary. Do scary. Scary is better. I like scary. End of video. Hello, Liquid New Hampshire. I am on with my guest, Dominic. How you doing today, Dominic? That's great. I brought you on to talk about your experience with autism. I know that you're only self-diagnosed, but I thought maybe having that sort of life experience on the podcast could be informative. Were there any signs growing up that you had anything different about you behaviorally? Well, that's an interesting question. I guess there was this one thing where probably any friend I had growing up will tell you that I was just very blunt and direct and honest about things that you're not supposed to be honest about. If I saw someone I thought was ugly, I would just say it. I really didn't do a good job with that. I remember one time a girl asked me if she was fat, and I told her yes. But then I said, but you're like the attractive kind of fat though, like you've got like a good face kind of a thing going on, and genuinely it's not bad. You look good, not just despite being fat, but like you look good as fat. And she actually really appreciated that. That was an interesting conversation that I'll never forget, because so many of the people that she asked just immediately said no. But when she looked in the mirror, she could tell that she was larger, than other girls. So she knew that those people were all lying. They were all full of shit. But when I said yes, she knew I was being honest. So then when I told her that she still looked beautiful, she actually believed me. And she said it really helped her self-esteem. So sometimes that kind of brutal honesty can be cruel. I try not to repeat brutal truths to people because it's just not fun to hear. I don't go around finding people I personally think are unattractive and just repeating, "You're ugly," to them. That would just be bullying. But I do think that honesty can be valuable and important, and that we should be maybe more honest as a society. But part of that growing up was that I would also go around to random people, and I would just ask them straight up. I would be like, "Hi, I find you attractive. Would you like to have sex with me?" I would phrase it like that. I would phrase it, a normal person might say, "You want to fuck?" or something. I would phrase it very neutrally. "Would you like to have sex with me?" So I guess that maybe should have been an indicator. That's interesting. I mean, so how did people respond to that? That's a very unnatural, sort of an inhuman way to talk to people. I mean, did you get any negative responses? Well, sure, yeah. I mean, I remember one time I had gone up to two random girls in the hallway when I was in high school. I think this was like junior year, and I think they were like freshmen, and I didn't really know them because you mostly know the people in your grade when you're in high school, right? And I went up to them and I asked one of them out. I said, "Would you like to go on a date sometime?" And she was like, I don't know you. Who are you? I was like, well, you don't really have to know me. I find you attractive. I think you're cute. I would like to go on a date. You can get to know me. I didn't really get that far, though, conversationally. She was just like, no, no, go the fuck away, please. And then I turned to the girl next to her, and I said, how about you? Um, they did not, they did not like that. They did not appreciate that. Well, I mean, it seems to me that that's pretty dehumanizing, don't you think? Like of course they didn't appreciate it. Everybody wants to be special, and you're kind of getting across to her that she's not special, that she's just any random person. Who would like that? Me. I would like that. And, I would love a stranger to come up to me and ask me out. But then also, like, should it be dehumanizing? Like, isn't that what asking someone out is? Isn't that what, like, asking someone to get a drink at a bar is? And, maybe it's the autism thing. Maybe it's the not understanding social cues. But I've never understood this code language that we use. Can I buy you a drink? What you're asking is, can I flirt with you? But for some reason, it's not okay to say, can I flirt with you? Why not? Who decided that? Who decided that? And how can I kill him? Because I hate him. Whoever that guy was who decided that, I don't like him. So instead we have to say, can I buy you a drink? I don't even drink alcohol. That doesn't even make sense. Straight edge. Straight edge. It's tattooed on me. It doesn't make any sense for me to have to ask that. But I do. And then there's other ones too, like other subtle sort of social cues that I think mostly neurotypical people end up using, right? Like you go to a dance club and you're supposed to like slowly kind of sexily dance behind somebody, and then the dance gets like increasingly like kind of touchy or what have you, and then you're like, do you want to get out of here? And I hate that. That makes me so uncomfortable, the thought of that, the looseness of it. It really, I mean, it violates the rules of consent. Because at a certain point, it kind of ceases to be consensual. The rules of consent are you're supposed to say out loud, verbally and affirmatively. You're supposed to get enthusiastic support for everything you do. May I kiss you? Would you like to kiss now? And that doesn't happen in the real world of how we're taught to date. The real world is like these very loose, sort of strange mechanisms. And yeah, I think that's the thing that frustrates me the most, is that I have this dual set of expectations, where on one hand, all I want is to be direct. All I want is to ask the stranger directly and say directly to them what I want, which is what I'm supposed to do in theory. That's enthusiastic consent. I love the idea of consent culture, a world where it's socially acceptable to ask anyone anything, and then they just very straightforwardly tell you yes or no, and then you know where you stand. And if it's a yes, it's a yes, and if it's a no, it's a no. That sounds beautiful to me, but that is not how most people work. And in fact, if you try to operate that, you will be punished. You will be scrutinized and stigmatized and shunned. So there's this weird contradiction where I'm explicitly taught that I am supposed to be using coded language as much as possible and being as indirect as possible. And then on the other hand, when you're behaving in that indirect way, you always risk consent. You always risk being wrong, overstating your hand. Obviously, you don't risk actual, like, sexual violence. I don't want to say actual sexual violence, but you risk something real. You risk gray area sexual assault. You risk not knowing enough about where the mind is at of the person you're communicating with to know whether or not they're okay with what you're doing. And I'm being told simultaneously I need to be as direct as possible, and then also that I can't be direct, I have to be as indirect as possible. And then if I'm using this loose body language and I get a vibe and that vibe is wrong, that's on me for not having an explicit, direct answer. I'm sorry, were we supposed to be talking about autism?
The Friend Zone, published by A Tangled Contradiction, on August 20th, 2024.
I'm a pretty feminist guy, and as a result I spend my time in pretty feminist spaces on social media. As a result I'm suggested a lot of feminist hot takes. One such hot take that seems to have spread like wildfire is that the friend zone is a sexist concept. The logic goes as follows. Men believe that women are objects, and on some conscious or subconscious level they believe they are owed access to women's bodies. So men invent concepts like the friend zone so that they can complain about female friends who don't sleep with them, and so that they can try to guilt trip their female friends into sex. Women, of course, are sick of feeling objectified, which is to say they're sick of their male friends only wanting them for their bodies. So when men talk about the friend zone, it's just men finding yet another way to imply they don't care about the contents of their female friends' personalities if they can't sleep with them. I don't think the logic here is incorrect. Men feeling entitled to women's bodies, 100% real problem. Men not caring about the contents of attractive women's personalities, 100% real problem. And of course I'm sure most women can bring up multiple examples of guys who were sexist and or creeps in numerous ways and additionally talked about the friend zone. But is that the whole story? I don't think so. If women's primary problem is objectification, here defined as men caring about their bodies but not the contents of their soul, then the natural complement is men being desired for their personality by women who don't care at all about their bodies. The thesis is pretty straightforward here. The friend zone is not just a product of male entitlement, it is the natural complement of objectification. As a man, what I want more than anything is to know I'm capable of being found desirable, and it's exhausting and demotivating to constantly feel like women who get along well with me, who have every potential to be a good partner for me consistently just don't like me in that way. Attraction is complicated and I know I'm running the risk of oversimplifying things here, but I think we all know what I just don't like you in that way means. Or at the very least, as a guy, hearing that over and over, it's hard not to imagine that I just don't like you in that way means no matter how kind and compassionate you are, no matter what the contents of your soul, you will never know intimacy of any kind with me because you are ugly and unattractive. Most people are stupid, and as a result most men are stupid. And that means that most men aren't particularly good at separating talking about how it feels to always be just friends from misogyny, slut-shaming and male entitlement. But when we create narratives around things like the friend zone that cast it as sexist, we create a little voice in young men's heads that tells them that their feelings, their difficulties with loneliness and sexual frustration, don't matter. And that in fact, when they get together with their male friends and bond over how rough it is always being friend zoned, they are cringe and sexist and bad. If that's what we tell young men, we're going to get two groups of young men. One group that quietly keeps their feelings about how much it sucks to never be seen as desirable to themselves, and men that rage against feminism and against women for making them feel like their problems aren't real or aren't allowed to be real. We need to stop seeing the friend zone as a product of male entitlement and start seeing it as a natural complement to objectification. Then maybe we can create conversations where instead of young women complaining about men to other young women while young men complain about women to other young men, we can actually talk to each other directly. Women can say I want to be smart and funny and attractive and sexy, and men can say that's funny, I want all those same things too.
A world where women can say I want to be smart and funny and sexy. And men can say, that's funny. I want all those same things too. You can tell I've been making this video for a while now, since I'm getting increasingly resigned and exhausted in terms of my tone as it proceeds forward. Losing interest in the subject matter, but I'm also not losing interest in the subject matter. because it's fairly personal subject matter. What's the next section called? Nice guys. Nice guys are an aspect of feminist theory. In feminism, there's this concept, well, I don't know if it's in feminist theory, but in pop feminism, there's this concept of the nice guy. It's sort of a trope at this point, sometimes a media trope. It's also pointing towards a type of person in the real world, too. And the concept is basically this guy who treats a woman very nice, is very kind, very polite. Maybe he's a feminist. Maybe he's even woke, right? And he does this sort of to manipulate women, to win women over, to befriend women, in order to sleep with them or in order to date them. But then when he discovers that the woman is uninterested in sleeping with him or dating him, he feels betrayed. He feels a sort of a sunk cost fallacy. Oh, I was so nice. I put in all the effort. I did everything right. And it still didn't pay off. And then he gets aggravated. Maybe he gets violent. Maybe he becomes very toxic or abusive, or maybe he just leaves also. There's lots of women who will talk about men in their life who befriend them for a time, and then they realize that they're not gonna, it's not gonna happen. They're not gonna end up dating this person. And when that's the case, they just leave. They just stop hanging out with her. And sometimes that can really suck for a woman, right? Because she looks around her and this man who she thought was going to be her friend, turns out he wasn't interested in that for its own sake, and he just disappears. Which sort of leaves a lingering question of like, why do men behave this way, right? For feminists, the answer to why do men behave this way is pretty simple. They think they're entitled to a woman's body. And sure, yeah, okay, I'll maybe that's a component of why men behave this way. I'll give you that. Okay. I don't want to disagree with that too much. That's definitely a problem in society that I've seen. I think there could be another layer to this, though, where why does the man in question here, who believes he's entitled to a woman's body, why doesn't he just approach her directly? You know, what's to stop him from just approaching a woman directly and just ask her to fuck, right? If that's the problem, is that secretly on some level he's just out to fuck, but he's befriending these women instead and putting in all this time and effort, and then when he realizes he ain't gonna fuck, then he gets angry, right? What's to stop him from skipping those other steps and just asking directly? And I mean, you can tell from the rest of this video by this point what the answer to that is, right? The answer to that is that it's not socially acceptable for men in our society to ask about sex directly. They're not allowed to talk about sex directly. They're not allowed to express their feelings about sex directly. They're not allowed to really feel a desire for even a relationship publicly. You know, like when guys talk about getting friend zoned, they're talking about wanting a relationship with a woman, not necessarily like casual sex, and they're talking about being upset that this relationship didn't work out and that they're just friends. If that's not socially acceptable, if we've gotten to a point where men have to sort of pretend to be asexual in order to be seen as a good man and a good person right off the bat, then we've created an incentive structure that teaches young men that if you want to have sex, And I don't think we're going to talk young men out of wanting to have sex. Or young women, for that matter, I suppose, right? I don't think we're going to talk anyone out of wanting relationships or sex. I don't think that's a feasible or reasonable goal for people to have. I think that what we're doing right now is we are incentivizing these young men to pursue sex in the least direct way humanly possible. We're creating an incentive structure that tells them, hey, you're not allowed to just go out and pursue sex. You're not allowed to even pursue dating or relationships right away. You're not allowed to be that direct about what you want. And we're telling young men, if you want a relationship, you have to develop it organically. It has to grow naturally out of your friendships, out of your communities. And we also don't have communities. That's another big problem. And so what you end up with is a bunch of men trying to create these organic situations by befriending women and biding their time. So the way I see it, the culture that we've built hurts men by forcing them to sort of deny their own desires and to live dishonestly, to not be open about sex and dating. It hurts men by making it harder to approach women in a society where they're the ones who are expected to do the approaching. So we've got this double-edged problem for young men, right? And then also it hurts women because we've created an incentive structure for lying and manipulation. And really the best guys are probably the ones who would tell you to your face what their intentions are, right? Or maybe that's not the best guys, but they're certainly better than the guys who would cloak their intentions, and who are also secretly out for sex. And at least he's honest. I remember in college, I had a situation where, for once in my life, there was a girl who was interested in me, which I was very excited about the possibility of, but we had nothing in common. Like, nothing in common whatsoever. She would dream of this, like, white picket fence life with a big, huge house and like 1 million kids, and she wanted to be like a teacher because she wanted to be around kids all the time, and she only listened to like mainstream popular country music and watched pretty like basic TV shows. I don't want to be too rude. I liked her a lot. She was a really great friend, but she was a little bit basic. And I'd like to think that I like experimental music and I like artsy movies, and I'm not really interested in the kind of life she saw herself having, and just in general, it just didn't really feel like we had many interests in common, but we kind of vibed on a rapport level, and so I was pretty straight up from the beginning that I didn't really see us having a romantic relationship for that reason. And I felt often tugged at because here was a girl who was interested in me, and here I was lonely and upset that there weren't more girls interested in me. And here I was sort of almost self-sabotaging, it felt like. But it wasn't self-sabotaging. I was being honest with her, right? I was telling her straight up, hey, look, I'm attracted to you. But it would be wrong to tell you I'm romantically interested when I'm not, because you're clearly romantically interested in me. And I think that was the morally correct thing to do in that situation. And I think most men don't do that in that situation. On the other hand, though, most men also didn't have a period of time in high school where they would walk up to random women in the hallway and be like, hello, I find you attractive. Would you like to either have sex and or go on a first date with me, depending on your preferences? Which is a real thing that I actually said because I have something wrong with my brain. And normal guys also don't do that. So I guess. But was that bad? Why was that bad? Because it's not normal? Seems much more honest and polite than the majority of things normal men do. To me, at least. I'd give up forever to touch you, 'cause I know that you feel me somehow. You're the closest to heaven that I'll ever be, and I don't wanna go home right now. And all I can taste is this moment, and all I can breathe is your light. And sooner or later it's over, I just don't wanna miss you tonight. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. And you can't fight the tears that ain't coming, or the moment of truth in your life. When everything feels like the movies, yeah, you bleed just to know you're alive. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they understand. When everything's meant to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am.